Welcome back to our Simple Healthy Life podcast, where our goal is to have real, insightful conversations on topics that we find interesting. And if you are finding our topics interesting, we'd ask you to please like, follow, subscribe, and maybe even reach out if you're interested in a specific topic or would like to be a guest of the podcast. Today, just the two of us, and we wanted to talk a little bit about mindfulness and specifically novelty. So I'll let you start. Let's
Sure.
talk a little bit about mindfulness and novelty.
Sure. Thanks, MJ. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Obviously, we talk a lot about mindfulness on this podcast, and you and I are both like very deep into this subject. But even amongst the umbrella of mindfulness, I still keep finding new aspects that are enjoyable to me. And one of the ones that kind of inspired this conversation today is this idea of noticing novelty. And we'll talk about noticing novelty. We'll talk about novelty in general, and then mindfulness in the larger scene. But noticing novelty is this very interesting idea. And one of the studies that I came across recently was a study by Ellen Langer, and she's been in this kind of like mind-body connection area of research for many, many years. She's got to be like, she's pretty old. She's got to be like 80, something like that. She's like that kind of old when she talks, or like there's clicking that happens and you're like, where is that coming from? Anyways, very intelligent, very, very profound research. But one of the studies that really grabbed my attention was this one on noticing novelty and perceived enjoyment of an activity. And what she had done was she had taken a group of people who maybe didn't particularly like an activity. I'm going to call it football because I think that's one of the things that they actually did study. They took people who didn't really particularly enjoy football, watching football, and they said, well, what I'm going to do is we're going to split you up, and one group of people, you're going to just watch football and tell me how you felt about it. The other groups of people, maybe there was like 2 or 3, I don't know the exact details, but the other groups of people, what they did is they told them to notice new things about the actual game itself, right? And it could be significant, it could be completely insignificant, but it just had to be new, something you haven't noticed before. And what they found was that the groups who noticed something new seemed to enjoy the activity more, and the groups who noticed many new things really did seem to enjoy the actual activity of watching football, which is interesting. And they've done this in a number of different fashions and with different activities. And the general consensus is that when we take time to notice new things about an activity, we enjoy it more. And maybe that speaks a bit to our general sense of presence. It takes a certain amount of engagement with a moment to even know if something is new, right? How do you notice new things on your ride to work, for example, or ride to the gym? It's like you've done it 1,000 times, if not more, and you probably never notice anything new. Very rarely will I be driving and I'll say, "Ooh, that was new." It has to be like this like statue, this brand new art statue that they're like, wow, when did that show up there? And then the person I'm driving was like, that's been there for months. I'm like, oh, okay. But kind of interesting stuff.
So it's funny how you kind of labeled it with mindfulness, because we as a society have labeled mindfulness a million different ways, right? But essentially what it is just being aware of the present moment. And I think what people would maybe fail to recognize is that the present moment has a million things in it. Right? We have all of our senses. We have our eyes. We can see all these different things, but we're so good at blocking it all out. We're so good at saying like, okay, I'm in the podcast studio today. I know what that's going to look like. I know Ryan's going to be there. I already know everything there is to know about this environment that I'm in right now. And that helps us. It helps us get through our life. But when we flip the script a little bit and say, you know what, today I'm going to be interested in what's actually happening around me, that novelty, we do find more happiness, and we do find it more interesting. And whatever that does to the brain, I think whether it's dopamine or whatever receptors going on in there, that level of interest, right? Because that's what we want. We want to live this like interesting life, and going to work every day, sitting in your office, doesn't feel interesting, but it could, right? And I think that's what this study's saying is, if you can take the time to look and find something new, that you're going to find it more interesting, subsequently make you happier about it. Is that what this is saying?
Yeah, and well said. Yeah, I think it's a good example, like going to the office, because you could do that for years and years and years and know almost exactly how the day is going to play out. Like I remember doing that as well, and just even taking the time to say, well, today I'm going to notice one new thing about my actions or the environment of the office. Maybe that helps, and the studies would suggest it. So it's interesting. I couldn't help but think about this idea of like foraging, and we actually did this like workshop over the summer or something. I actually don't know how long it's been, to be honest with you, but we
the other day. That's what you always say.
Yeah, it was the other day.
Not today for sure. So it was the other day.
Not today, not yesterday, the other day. And so we went and met up with this person who was, I guess, like somewhat trained in foraging, finding edible plants and mushrooms and all that kind of stuff. And she gave us kind of like this basic run through, like, here, look for this, look for that. Look at the trees and look at the base of the trees, and you're kind of looking for this shape of mushroom and not this aspect, and this variety of mushroom is probably not great, and this one is edible, et cetera, et cetera. And
so, hold on. So I got to kick off.
Yeah, sure.
So this person who you're not sure was very educated on the subject, or she's just somebody that you found? Think this go? Because you're looking for mushrooms, right? And one thing we know about mushrooms, if you eat the wrong one, it's not good for anybody.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I think we just found her online. Like,
she's an accredited mushroom finder.
Craigslist mushroom finder.
Okay. Well, you're alive, so continue.
Yeah. Nonetheless, she seemed pretty knowledgeable, so that was pretty good. But anyway, so it's a big group of people. We go through this little hike, and so we're looking for whatever, looking for mushrooms. And it is kind of hard because they're not actually very obvious. It's interesting because prior to like actively trying to forage, I used to see mushrooms, here and there, and be like, oh, cool, they're everywhere. Not necessarily recognizing that they're not everywhere. They're actually quite hidden, and it's kind of hard to find. But nonetheless, so we go and we're looking through the environment, and we actually did on that one I found the biggest mushroom. I was the winner of the forage. It was a mushroom like this big, like it was huge.
It doesn't sound that hard to find.
No, yeah, it wasn't. It was actually, I had just been a little ahead of everyone, probably because I was lacking mindfulness. I was sprinting through the it was like right on the side of the road, and then I'm like flexing on it. But nonetheless, anyways, it was a good thing to do. But then what happened, and this is the more important, relevant part of the discussion, is that now that I have some fundamental beginner skill in foraging, now as I go for hikes and walk on these trails that I've walked 100 times before, I really do find myself engaging with the environment and the sensory experience, if not just the visual experience of the trail, and it keeps me completely present to the moment. Because I'm looking at every little thing. I'm trying to find the new thing. The new thing would be the presence of a mushroom that does pop up from here and there, and I found that to be kind of interesting. And so it really, I guess that study had resonated a little bit because I just drew the connection between, hey, when I actually really pay attention, even if it's for a goal, I'm trying to find like food or something, it seems to keep me really engaged. Seems to keep me happy, present, and just generally not in my head, which is probably a good place not to be.
Right, yeah. Well, practicing mindfulness is something that I know you do regularly. And it kind of goes back to we talk about like the reasons you practice the reasons that you might practice mindfulness is so that when you get into these environments where you're like emotionally charged or angry or stuff's happening super fast, you have the ability to kind of go back to your practice, right? But what you're experiencing and explaining is essentially that by practicing mindfulness, you can use it in order to be present when you want to be present and really notice each particular aspect of your trail or your environment. And there is actually, I'm gonna butcher this, but it's like shin-yu-ku is a term that they use over in Japan for nature bathing, which is essentially what you've practiced. And believe it or not, nature bathing or shin-yu-ku is actually what's the word I'm looking for? Supplemented by health insurance, right? Doctors can prescribe you to go out to the woods, walk, and spend time immersed in nature.
Wow.
Now, I'm guaranteeing, I'm not over there, and I don't know this to be true, but I'm guaranteeing that they're not like, hey, why don't you throw your headphones on and listen to some music, or bring your phone with you and check your social media halfway down the trail, right? I'm guaranteeing this is an exercise in being present.
Wow.
And as we learn to be present, another aspect of this learning to be present, it actually will slow down your perception of time. So we don't need this long 2-hour hike to engage in this novelty. We can do it in a very short period of time. So if you're out there thinking like, okay, that's great, but I'm kind of in the middle of my day here listening to our podcast, like take the moment, shut us off for a minute, or don't do that. That's the wrong. We don't say that on it. No. Shut us off for a minute, and then engage in the action of finding something new. Maybe looking around, and maybe the air smells a certain way, or maybe it always smells that way and you don't notice. These types of behaviors are almost like a way to work backwards into practicing mindfulness.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I mean, and it's funny. It's like it seems so silly to be like, yeah, go take a walk. Like you're sick, go take a walk. But really, quite honestly, it's probably the thing for most people, right? We're so fixated on like that, kind of cliche, but like that instant fix or that instant gratification, when really a lot of our problems are solved by maybe being a little bit more mindful. I mean, maybe being a little bit more present to the moment, and that's kind of what you speak of. And even even on the internal side, and this is the beautiful thing about mindfulness or meditation, is that you start to find that even your internal world has an infinite amount of sensory experience that you could find, right? And actually, you had just mentioned the term before this podcast, sensory foraging, which is kind of funny, given the foraging conversation. But I mean, maybe that makes sense. Maybe that helps someone understand, you're not looking for mushrooms, you're looking for different feelings within you. And that is important for a lot of people. I mean, I know how we've talked about this, and I speak with a lot of people who are really struggling with mental health quite often. And one of the things that happens is that we tend to avoid our self-perceived negative emotions so much that we don't even know what they are. We couldn't tell you a thing about them, right? Well, how are you feeling? Well, I'm down. I'm sad. Okay. But what does that even mean? Why are you feeling sad, or are you feeling shameful? Or are you feeling guilty? Or are you feeling, embarrassed? Are you feeling neglected or lonely? Right? There are more emotions than just sad, right? Sad is like such a non-descriptor for a feeling. Granted, I think it can be a perfectly acceptable feeling, but maybe we just and I guess the point here is I think that a lot of people tend to say that they're feeling sad as a way to avoid the actual problem, a way to like avoid what they're actually feeling. And so engaging even with those kinds of sensory experiences can be quite helpful.
Well, don't forget that for so many of us, we're only really taught about sad.
Sure.
Right? We're only explained, how are you feeling today? Are you feeling sad? Right? It's not like Are you feeling upset, concerned, depressed, anxious? Like these are like big, high level words. But one of the things that that you brought up when I decided to go down this path of mindfulness and decided I wanted to help other people do it, I engaged in a 6-week course. It was 6 weeks. It was called mindfulness-based stress reduction. It was put on by the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and it was 6 weeks of what's called vipassana meditation, and it's exactly what you're describing. It's the act of learning to be present in the present moment, and it's not always just about closing your eyes and sitting still. It could be walking meditation. It could be movement meditation. It's essentially this practice. And the part that I want to hit home here for everybody is what we did was we practiced. We literally found a new way to do it every week, and we practiced together and then apart. And I hated it. I got to be honest with you. I was new to the concept, and we kept practicing so much that I felt like I got it. I felt like I was like, all right, I got it. Okay, notice the bird, notice the trees, notice the things. But I was doing it as just a way to get a certification because I felt like I could. Okay, I understand what's going on now. But when you practice with intention, you start to realize there is an endless amount of things to notice. And one fun thing that I took away from it was play with your senses, right? Not on the mushroom trail, right? Or maybe even on the mushroom trail, but close your eyes and practice just noticing everything you can hear. Open your eyes and practice just noticing everything you can see, right? Stand in a position and notice just the way the body feels, whether it's in alignment or there's a particular part of your body that's talking to you. Each element of this is, and you got to approach it from a practice perspective, will allow you to put them all together and eventually, essentially, create an ability to notice or bring more novelty into your life. And this novelty, we know, is promotes, we already said it, promotes happiness, promotes more present feeling, promotes better feeling. But it is a practice. And there are lots of ways to practice. You just have to try them. You got to start and recognize that when you start this practice, you will be thrown off so many different times, so many different ways. And I might have mentioned this before, but even recently, as I've been getting deeper into my practice, I've been noticing that there are examples that keep coming up where it's like my body and my mind don't want me to continue the practice. I'll give you an example where 2 years ago, I would have been frustrated by this, but last week, I was doing my meditation, sitting, and it was uneasy, and I was a little uncomfortable, and it wasn't like I was able to really feel good about my meditation. It was more like, okay, I'm meditating, and then it was like, oh, I got this thing going on. Okay, then I got this thing going on, and then I actually laughed out loud because Tim the Toolman Taylor from Home Improvement jumps into my head, and I'm like, I literally said to myself, like, come on, guys, like, really? Like, you want me to not meditate that bad that you're going to give me this? Like, And what I realized was like, okay, there's some blockers here. There's some walls going up that for whatever the reasons are, and I tried to be without judgment. And, I pushed through and continued my 10-minute meditation. But these are the things that you'll be up against when you want to start this practice. So when you're out there and you're saying to yourself, like, I can't meditate because my brain is always doing this, or I can't practice mindfulness because I got too much going on, know that that's very true and very accurate for all of us. But this practice will let you lead you towards noticing novelty and bringing more positive happiness into your life.
Right. Yeah, you can't play piano either. You can't kick a field goal. You can't shoot a basketball. You can't speak French, right?
I can shoot a basketball.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Nice. But those are all true, right? But, true in the moment. Yeah, sure you can't. You can't meditate as to what you think the optimal form of meditation is, whatever that is. It's not real, by the way, but you think you can't do whatever that is at an optimal way, and you can't. You definitely can't. There's no way. And so that's why you have to practice. And there's no, and I like your point too, is about, it really is a skill, it really is a practice, just as any of those other things I mentioned. You have to do it. You could read for hours and hours and hours, watch every basketball video and game that there is, but you're never going to be better at it. There's no like, the intellectual knowledge doesn't transfer over to practice. And while seemingly very simple, like, I don't know about, I actually think about this kind of often. Sometimes when you watch people who are like masters of their craft, it almost seems very easy. And then you kind of think, well, I could do that.
Right.
Like I watched this, are you familiar with Harry Mack?
No.
Incredible freestyle rapper, artist. I want to say artist, musician. Like his ability to freestyle on a whim and just drop these like incredibly poetic lines, and these lines that have layers of meaning. He's not just throwing out lines that rhyme. He's throwing out lines that have layers and layers and layers of meaning to them, and then it's really phenomenal. And I watch him sometimes, and I can understand a little bit as to what he's doing. I can see it on an intellectual level to some degree. And I sit there and I'm like, wow, that's like, he's doing something that's blowing my mind and in divine in some ways because he's so well practiced, like truly master. But in other times I watch a video, I'm like, oh, I could freestyle.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, no. And it's certainly not true. Like his level of practice is just, I don't even know, like I would have to do it every day for the rest of my life to probably achieve the same number of hours that he's put into it. But, point being there is that some things seem easier to do than they actually are. And meditation, you could look at that and be like, well, yeah, I can get that. I pay attention all the time. It's like, no, you don't though. You use that level, even you're like, I can see the birds. I look at this. It's like, you're not actually practicing. You haven't practiced enough to realize that you're totally incompetent.
Yeah.
That right this second is like that Dunning-Kruger kind of effect. Like you think you're better than you are at it. And unfortunately, we have a level of mindfulness at a baseline that happens. Like we kind of pay attention a little bit, but only until you actively try and pay attention do you realize that you almost never do, even though you could. And so, yeah, don't shun it, but practice it and set a 3-minute timer and just see what happens, right? And then get better at it.
Yeah, 100%. And I would say, I was thinking about this number, the 10,000 hour rule, right? 10,000 hours before you're a master at something. And I mean, let's face it, like 2 or 3 things in our lives we've done for 10,000 hours. I mean, if that, right? And it really requires you to continue pushing through all of the stuff that happens in order to become that expert. I know I'm not saying to be an expert meditator, you gotta spend 10,000 hours, but if you have the idea that, you know what I'm going to do, I'm going to do 5 minutes every day, I'm going to do 7 minutes a day, then you can start to work through those things. Like I'm working through right now, like Tim the Toolman Taylor, like what the heck is that? Like this is coming from someone who intentionally does meditation every single day for some period of time. And if this had been 2 years ago, I would have said like, oh, like, yeah, sometimes I can't meditate because, I got a lot going on, right? I would have never said, hey, sometimes I feel like there's some actual layers of me that are blocking me from accomplishing my goal. But it's because I hadn't spent the time looking deeply into what's going on. And now that I've gotten further along, now I can see that. And I'm interested to see what the next, kind of process or blocker or or euphoric feeling, right, comes up. And I would encourage everybody. There's so many benefits to just noticing new things as a way to be in the moment, as a way to be meditating and or be mindful. That if you can do that when you're at work, or here's a great example for those families that have dinner together every night. Like, how many times during the week do you just, all right, I got to get dinner on the table. I got to have the kids got to get their bed, whatever, and right, and you fly through it like it's this thing that you have to do. When you stop for a moment and pause and just look around and see the joy that you bring your significant other or your kids, and look at them and watch and notice, like, watch their face as they eat or they're smiling. Like, these are these moments that could be Kairos moments, right? These are these transformative moments that you go, this is why I'm doing it. This is what it's all about. And then try not to get down on yourself for all the times that you already pushed through, like wasted is the wrong word, but like, man, I should be doing this more often, right? I can't believe I'm 2 years into doing the same thing and have never really noticed how cool that is that, they always push their broccoli to the left side of the plate. I don't know, making stuff up, but essentially there's so many things to notice. And when we do, that feeling that comes with it is unmistakable.
Yeah. No, well said. And I think the relationship example in general is really good, right? How many times, we've been with people for many, many years and just kind of like, they're going to say this, they're going to say that. Like, you kind of get a feel for people, but do you actually really know how their day went? And maybe that's a powerful thing to do. Maybe that's how you practice your mindfulness. You when you're talking with someone, a good friend or a spouse or whoever, maybe you actually try to see, what is new about what they're saying, or encourage them to see something new, in their day, and see something new in your day, so that you have something interesting maybe to say. And this is like maybe for me, I'm saying this for myself. My day was fine. It was normal.
Yeah.
But if I had actually paid attention and I wasn't so preoccupied being busy, maybe I would have a good story. Maybe I would have something to point out. And if not for them, then for myself. One of the actual this comes from there's a world champion storyteller, apparently. You know this? This is like
no, but I'm interested.
Yeah, I don't know his name. I know nothing about it. I just know that there's a guy. He's a championship storyteller. He wrote a book called I don't know what the book is called.
All right.
For
The fact that there is a world championship storyteller tells me enough. I can figure. I can chat GPT that.
Nonetheless, I do know one of his tips is to actually reflect upon the day and try to work on your skill of finding moments in the day that are particularly interesting, right? And I know that if I were to go through my day, I might have trouble some days. But I know that he also discusses this idea of, there are going to be days where you find like, there's nothing interesting to say, but there is always a story for the day coming from world championship storyteller. He must know.
Well, now that you say it, how interesting is it that when you engage with a book, right, of an author that you love, the way that they articulate the scene, right? They have to, if someone was just like, all right, we're going to, all right, here's a book. Mike and Ryan are going to sit in a podcast studio and, right, that's not how good books are written, right? They talk about the way the sky looks or the feeling that was in the air that morning when mom took the eggs out of the refrigerator, right? Like whatever that is, right? They have to engage with that, and they have to think deeply about like the way the sun might come through the window, or these are the things that to translate a real life experience down to words on a page would really require a sense of novelty. And really require a sense of feeling, and maybe it's easier when you're making it up. Right? Maybe it's like you could spend the time thinking like, all right, this is the feeling I want the audience to see or feel. So, close my eyes, I think about, all right, what is that? You know, the chill in the air, or that type of stuff. But that's what we're talking about.
Right.
That's really what we're talking about. Turn your life into a story, right? Turn it into the story that you want to write, and practice doing it. Practice the ability to do that, and it's gonna lead to some pretty amazing and profound things.
Right, right. Yeah, you don't need to lead an exciting life to have a good one, and every life has some great stories, and also a good example of like how you can practice one thing and get so much better with it, right? Like the writing example. I could read, and you've done this, and everyone's done this. You've read passages, and you're like, I could write that. No, you can't. The wordsmith, the crafting that happens there is beyond your level of comprehension, your intellectual level of comprehension. Hence why you would need to write the 10,000 hours that person did, or J.K. Rowling, however many hours she had wrote before Harry Potter actually came into existence. I'm sure it was a lot, right? And so even though it seems like we can do these things, we're mindful, I don't need to practice this. It's like, no, you're not. You don't even get it. You don't even understand your level of incompetence with
Right.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wasn't there like some level of, it's like, it's like, you think you know everything, and then you start to realize you don't, and then you start to realize you don't even know what you don't know. And that's where, once you get to that point, that's when you're no longer an idiot.
Right. Right.
It's something along those lines. But, it does make sense, and I'm experiencing it right now. And I teach mindfulness. I spend my time walking through people with, how to engage in this. And I'm still at the point where I'm still an idiot. I'm still like, crap, I don't even know what I don't know. And that comes in, maybe in my next 1,000 hours, I'll start to learn what it is I don't know.
Right. Yeah. That was like one of the most profound insights for me in meditation. And I've been doing it for a couple of years, and somewhat regularly. I took little breaks here and there just because I fell out of the habit, but pretty regularly. And I recognize that, wow, even me doing this pretty regularly for a decent amount of time, I'm not mindful 90% of the day, right? So I can't imagine what it was like day one, me starting that stuff. It was 99% of the day, maybe, if I'm lucky, So I think it's kind of an important thing. Just pay attention, try to learn what you don't know. And that was a good anecdote too. I think it was Socrates that they had at one point deemed like the most most intelligent man in town, because they went around asking people, and everyone was like, yeah, I'm the smartest. And Socrates was like, I don't know anything. And they're like, yep, you're the guy.
All right, we're going to listen to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I guess to go from quoting Socrates to Joe Rogan, one thing that stuck with me forever was something he said. He said, and this is just for people out there that are like, I can't be bothered. Notice, right? I said, there are people out there that have devoted their entire life to stuff you've never even heard of, right? So that just tells me there is so much to see and to do and to know and to think about and to be present with, that this is an unending journey. But going back to that concept of practicing novelty, practicing mindfulness, I think it makes you a more interesting person.
Certainly.
I certainly will hope that after this discussion, for me personally, I can practice some novelty today, so that when I get to that dinner table tonight with my wife and she says, how was your day? I can say, hey, here's 3 things I noticed about today that was different than my typical Wednesday.
Right.
And maybe if you're out there listening, maybe you do the same.
Right.
Maybe you practice today trying to find 3 things that are interesting. And remember, we're not saying good. Right? We're not saying good. We're not like, oh, this, my coffee came out and it tasted so perfect, right? Well, that's good, right? But wasn't it? It could also just be interesting. So maybe we practice 3 things today and see what happens.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, and let it be an action, not just a thought like, I guess this went okay. No, like take some time, take 2 minutes and actively write it down if you need to. I think that's another point here, is that you have to practice these things rather than just trying to intellectualize them and hope that they translate to something, because it probably won't.
Well said.
Cool. All right, great. Well, yeah, you can find us on Spotify and most other podcast platforms. If we are unfamiliar, well, my name is Ryan Gibo. I'm a registered dietitian and co-owner of Nurture Nutrition.
And I'm Mike James. I'm the owner of Simple Healthy Life and co-owner of our labs, opening soon.
Amazing.
Maybe they'll sponsor us.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe the owner will drop in and drop a sponsor. But yeah, thanks for listening. Please drop us a follow on Spotify. That really helps us. And then we will catch you next time.